Hi, here's May and welcome to the third video about drawing Genshin Impact characters as idols. If you haven't seen part 1 and 2 yet, I'd recommend checking them out before this one. I put some Genshin characters in different idol groups, designed outfits and drew illustrations for them, and in today's video I'll talk about one of these groups. This small video series is all about a project in which I combined two of my biggest interests, Genshin Impact and idol anime, which was a lot of fun. For this group, I think I won't mention the name right in the beginning because it would be very telling of who are the members in the group, but for now I'll just describe their aesthetic. It can be described as a more edgy and lo-fi one. They do rock music that is often a bit more dramatical and has a dark sad undertone. Some indie vibes are included in their music as well. They are inspired by scene, pastel goth, cyberpunk, vaporwave, arcadecore and gamercore aesthetic. As with the previous videos, I show the time-lapses of the illustrations, but for one of them I'll show parts of the screen-recorded process, not the full one since it would be too sped up. The first member I'll talk about in this group, I can really imagine him having a lot of fun being an idol. Can you guess who it is? It's Venti. If you want to make some guesses about the other ones, you can do so in the comments. Let's start with his full body illustrations. Here I sketched in both poses side by side. I used two different files to draw the illustrations afterwards, and for the other characters though, since the file size would get too big with all layers I would include for each illustration. You'll also see proportion guides on the side. If you have seen the previous two videos, you know I drew the, spoiler, taller Genshin characters there. For the younger ones I wanted the heads to be bigger compared to the bodies, for example. In one pose, Venti had his arms stretched up, kind of waving, and the other one reaching down. I wanted his poses to convey that he is more expressive but also cute. He reminds me a bit of Torihime Mia, but let's save that for later when I talk about other characters he reminds me of. For the other pose, he has both arms lifted up, one hand above his eyebrow and the other one in front of his chest. Both poses were from a 3/4 view. Now for his modern outfit, since Venti has shorter pants in his in-game design, I wanted to go for short pants here as well. Other than that, he's wearing a t-shirt with big stripes at the sleeves and a collar with a small tie. This is tucked into his pants. He's also wearing longer boots. For the idol outfit in this group, I went with a shirt with various patches on it. You'll see how I drew this a bit differently for each one of the members. I wanted the outfit to be the same overall but look unique for each character as well. Other than the shirt, we have a bit looser pants that are tucked into long boots with a lot of laces. A cape is also at the back of the outfit, hanging from the belt wrapped around the waist. For the idol outfit, you'll see I went with a dark grey, black and blue as colors. The boots and shirt are the bright blue parts and the patches are a darker shade of this blue color. I had many ideas for color palettes to use for Venti's modern outfit. All of them would include blue, green or turquoise as well as black and or white. In the end, I went with a simple turquoise and white combination with a few black parts added. Speaking of things I added, let's talk about the accessoires next. Just like with the illustrations of the idol groups from previous videos, I adjusted and added in various accessoires after I had first finished drawing the full body illustrations. In his modern outfit, we'd have a bag at his right hip as well as around his upper body. On these bags, I also added in small symbols like smileys, wings, flowers or hearts. Other than that, he had a bracelet on his right arm and a small flower symbol resembling the symbol from his in-game design at his left hip. For the idol outfit, I also added the symbol on the bracelet on his right arm. Other than that, accessoires for the idol outfit include a lot of patches, belts and buckles. What's unique about the accessoires for Venti here would be the patches based on who he is and what he values in-game. We'd have a small white dove, a flower, a harp or lyre, and fitting to his role as an idol here, a clef. The eyes on the left pose where Venti has one arm reaching downward were way too far apart initially here, something I adjusted afterwards. The belt in his idol outfit and waistband for his pants in the modern outfits also were in different perspectives, and I adjusted this. Then I also changed up some of the proportions, made the platforms for his idol shoes taller and more even, and finally painted over parts that looked unclear. Next up are the CG illustrations. You already know this if you've seen the previous parts. After I had drawn two full body poses of a character, I would also draw a CG-like illustration inspired by some of my favorite idol fandoms like Ensemble Stars or AA Side. And this is what I'll talk about next. I also include parts of the screen recorded process for one of the members later on. To draw the illustrations, I used Clip Studio's 3D models, which helped a lot with planning the poses and figuring out the perspective of the backgrounds I would use here later on. At first, Venti was in a running or standing pose in his CG illustration, but you'll see I adjusted his pose to make it look like he's kneeling. In his kneeling pose, Venti has one of his hands stretched out, reaching forward towards the viewer, while for the other one this is similar but his arms more bent in front of his chest here. Adding in the flowy parts and Venti's braid was fun to me and helped to make the pose look more dynamic. I also drew in some guides for the perspective the body parts would be in to help me visualize how I would have to draw the clothes, even if they would be in motion, like the sleeves being slightly lifted up here. Adding in nice lighting often is what makes CG illustrations like these stand out in other fandoms, and the lighting I went with for Venti was from the left. I found it interesting to figure out how the lifted up arm would cast a shadow onto the upper body here. And finally, I adjusted the illustration similar to what I did for the full body ones before. Instead of adding accessoires, I painted in some hue variation using pastel turquoise, blue, purple and sometimes pink colors here. For most of these illustrations I would change up the face especially. The biggest things I changed up for Venti in the end would definitely be, for one, be his facial expression. I made his mouth a lot more open. Then I also changed up the folds on his clothes as well as his hand on the right, since the fingers seemed like they were spread out too far apart. Venti, the leader for the group, would really enjoy being an idol, definitely. He'd love to be in the spotlight and dance on stage. Since he also is a bard in-game, I can imagine he'd be very excited to compose music and sing, but also to help with coming up with dance moves. For events, he'd also be the main person to talk, and he'd make a lot of jokes. Next up are idol characters that remind me of Venti. First we have Hiyori, Bori, Subaru, Rinne, Sora, and Leo from Ensemble Stars. Next would be Momo, Nagi, and Torao from Idol 7, as well as Yuta and Hikaru from B Project. And finally, Ramuda, Jiro, and Dice from Hypnosis Mike remind me of him. The next member in this idol group would be Zhao. For both poses, Zhao had his right arm at his shoulder. The one from the front is a pose I'd used to reference for the proportions for the younger idol characters. You'll see it show up from time to time for the other illustrations as well. In this front pose, the other arm is on Zhao's hip, and for the pose from the side view, it's wrapped around his body. Onto the modern outfit. Here I went with a longer shirt that had a cut at the hip and various triangle shapes as pattern. Then I drew in tight jeans and sneakers. In his idol outfit, I went for long sleeves instead of the short ones Venti had. A difference between the outfits would also be the patches on the shirt, as well as the colors. Zhao's idol outfit has turquoise ones, while for Venti they were blue. I still wanted the colors to stay around the same value-wise for both versions here. I went for a turquoise-like green for Zhao's shirt. Other than that, his outfit is pretty much black, except for a few small bright turquoise accents. Accessoires I added in for Zhao's modern outfit would include a choker-like necklace, as well as a regular longer necklace. Then we have some bracelets, an earring, and a small bag at his hip, where his shirt is partly open. For the idol outfit, I added in small decorative patches fitting to Zhao, which would include a bird inspired by his constellation, a yaksha mask, as well as this pattern from his sleeve in-game, and finally something music themed fitting to this being an idol outfit, a cassette. While drawing Zhao's illustrations, making the legs look nice and flowy, establishing a nice silhouette for them was difficult. I drew over the legs and adjusted them many times. Moving on to the CG illustration for Zhao. For Zhao's pose, he is kneeling, one elbow is resting on his knee, the other arm is reaching forward, and his hand is stretched out. His head and shoulders are at different angles, something that was the case for most of the illustrations I made for this project. I find it can make the poses look more interesting. And here you can see why I changed up Venti's pose to be in a kneeling position before. I wanted him and Zhao to be viewed from a similar angle and camera. That way, when you would align both illustrations together, it could look like they are kneeling on the same floor and stage at the same height. However, adding boxes or platforms on stage is also a possibility, so just because two poses should line up, it doesn't mean both characters have to be in a similar pose. Drawing the idol outfit here was nice. I like transferring what I saw in my full body illustration of him onto this pose. Redrawing characters with their outfits in various angles and poses is a good way to test your understanding of perspective. Elements like belts or sleeves, for example, are similar to cylinders and wrap around the body. You can really see if you understand the perspective of the pose when you look at how you draw them. This idol outfit includes the hanging belts as flowing parts. Most idol outfits will have some flowy parts like this. It just makes the illustrations look a lot more interesting. Figuring out how I would draw them for the illustrations here was really nice and fun to me. I went with a light from the right for Zhao's illustration here, and I made his hair volume smaller and the eyes look more determined and less surprised during the adjustments phase. Zhao would be a rather closed-off person. He wouldn't talk much unless it's required of him. However, I think for him his vibe fits a lot to this group's music. While he wouldn't show a lot of his emotions in his day-to-day life, I think he's able to express how he feels through the music, which his fans would really enjoy. I could see him as someone who invests time into electronics and instruments. He'd take part in coming up with the music. Maybe he'd even play the e-guitar on stage sometimes. For characters that fit to Zhao to me, we have Jun, Rei, Hokuto, Kwaku, Kaito, and Izumi from Ensemble Stars, Yuki, Yamato, and Iori from Idol 7, Miroku and Nome from B Project, as well as Samatoki, Doppo, and Ryo from Hypnosis Mike. The third idol member in this group is Kazuha. Do you recognize the pattern for this group? Let's talk about the full body illustrations for him next. In one of the poses he was standing sideways, slightly turned away from the viewer. His back is facing the viewer a bit. The shoulders are going up to the left while the head is tilted downwards to the left. The hand in his back is reaching down while the one on the front is lifted up in front of his waist. For the other pose, I went with him standing facing forward, one arm wrapped in front of his waist, and for the other one it's lifted up. His elbow is kind of resting on the hand from the arm that's wrapped around the waist here. Also, for both poses, Kazuha has one leg straight while the other one is slightly bent, meaning his weight would rest on mostly one leg. The modern outfit I went with for Kazuha was made up of a oversized jacket, a hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. For the idol outfit here, I went with short sleeves like Venti, however for him the shirt is turquoise, just like with Zhao. Making the belt be at the same position or height on the upper body for all illustrations here was a bit challenging. Importing previous illustrations of the other members helped me here. You see I tried out a lot of options for colors for Kazuha's modern outfit, including red, brown, gold, black, white and blue tones. In the end I decided to go for a red hoodie, a grey jacket, bright blue jeans as well as black and red sneakers. Accessoires I drew in for Kazuha's modern outfit were a bag and a bracelet. The patches I added in for the idol outfit would include a maple leaf of course, then we'd have a wind swirl, music notes and on his back a small plant. As I was drawing Kazuha, I was a bit unsure about if I would want the hoodie in the modern outfit to be tucked into the pants or not, and decided to go for the tucked into the pants version in the end. For the pose where Kazuha is more turned away from the viewer, I also had some difficulties with drawing the back. I don't draw poses where the character is standing with their back facing towards the viewer in this way often, and I adjusted the curve of his back after looking up references. Another thing I adjusted for this pose would be the jacket. It was looking a bit weirdly curved to me. Other than that, I adjusted the shoe shape in this sideways pose and the arms for both poses a bit as well. Now we're moving on to Kazuha's CG illustration. Here he was kneeling on the floor, his left leg, the right one for the viewer, lifted up while the other one was bent more to the back. His upper body is facing to the right and his lower body as well as his head to the left. This turn in the body makes this pose look more dynamic to me. The shoulders are at a different angle from the eyes as well. The arm on the right is lifted up while the one on the left is reaching downwards. Overall, I wanted Kazuha's pose to convey that he's a calm, gentle but also expressive and charming person through this. While sketching in the idol outfit, drawing the boots was especially difficult to me. I wanted to make sure the laces would look like they're in the proper perspective. I added in the flowy belts, but the foreshortening for the one on the lower right is too extreme, something I adjusted later on. But before we talk about the things I adjusted, the lighting I went with for Kazuha's illustration would be from the right. Most of his body is lit here. Alright, now on to what I adjusted. As I said, the flowy belt was one of the things here. Then there was his right leg, as well as how the shirt would look around his legs in general. I made this look more rounded. I also adjusted the boots as well as his head. I think many people would like Kazuha as an idol. In this group, he'd be the soft-spoken person who brings some calmness to the group. To me, he also seems like he'd write some of the songs. He isn't as closed off as Zhao, but also not as outgoing as Venti. In events, he'd probably be open to talk as well, and he'd enjoy being there. I could also see him looking more into the outfits the group would wear, or keeping up with the group's blog and social media. Why could I see him hosting a small show where he'd respond to fans' comments and their questions, maybe in casual live streams? But now for our idol characters he reminds me of. Here I'm mentioning Ran, Adonis, Mao, Nikki, Kuro, and Mika from Ensemble Stars, Tonosuke, Tamaki, and Riku from Idolish 7, Yuruki, and Kazuna from B Project, as well as Ichiro, Kentaro, and Hifumi from Hypnosis Mike. And now for the final member in this idol group, which would be, leave a guess, A. Heizo, B. Ether, C. Wanderer, or D. Tignari. If you guessed C, you're right. Yes, this is an all-animo boy group, and technically also including Ether or Heizo would make sense here, but I focused on these for this group. The poses I drew for Wanderer would be, for one, him having one arm lifted up with his hand next to his head and the other one held up in front of his chest. In the other pose he would have his arms crossed and was standing at a side three-quarter view. The modern outfit I drew for Wanderer would be made up of a oversized hoodie with turtleneck collar, knee-long pants and sneakers. The idol outfit here is basically the version that's left from all four possible combinations when you either have long or short sleeves and blue or turquoise colors, long sleeves and blue colors. The patches are a difference here again as well. The placement and the kind of patches I drew, the sizes, position and placement of them are a difference here again as well. Color-wise I went with a pastel purple sweater and black pants or a black sweater and pastel blue pants for his modern outfit. I also tried out combining this with either black or white socks and sneakers. You can tell me whether you prefer the purple or black sweater in the comments. Accessoires added for the modern outfit here would include a bag, watch and leg band as well as some earrings. The patches of his idol outfit include a feather, a symbol that should represent his in-game head, and a CD. I also thought he'd maybe have the eternity symbol on the back of his outfit, similar to the eternity symbol that's also on some of his outfit parts in game. On the back of his outfit, similar to Kazuha, I wanted his outfit to not have all the patches be visible from the front, but since both his poses are from the front, it makes it so that you can only see 3 of the 4 patches. While drawing Wanderer, I got aware of that even when I draw oversized clothes, I still want the character to not look too big, if that makes sense. It's something I want to look more into. I tend to draw clothes looking rather tight, even if they're oversized, because of this. So I want to learn to draw more oversized clothes in the future because of this. Finally, for things I adjusted for Wanderer's illustrations, we'd have his upper arm for the left pose. It was too short at first. For this pose I also adjusted the pants. Skin color was also different for both versions initially, which confused me since I had used the same skin color palette for drawing all illustrations, but I just must have accidentally chosen a wrong color once here. For this pose I also adjusted the pants width. Finally, let's talk about a CG illustration for Wanderer. His pose is a bit similar angle-wise to Zhao's, but here the leg that's further back is lifted up, not the one closer to the viewer. He has his left arm resting on his left knee and his hand there under his chin, and his chin is resting on his hand there. The other arm is further backwards with his hand resting on his hip. I experimented with a more sideways head angle at first, but went with one where he'd be looking more forward. The head and shoulders would be around the same angle here. Avoiding tangents while drawing the outfit in this idol group was kinda challenging because of the many patches and bells. Once again, I added in flowy bells for some movement. Wanderer has rather short hair, so conveying movement and making the illustration look more interesting through this alone would have been more difficult. The lighting in this illustration is from the left, it's kinda mirrored to Zhao's. For shading this illustration, making sure that the areas in shadow and light would transition nicely into one another was difficult and interesting to figure out. The lighting and shadow can form different shapes with different amounts of detail. For example, on Wanderer's left arm here, the shadow shapes have a bit more detail, while the shapes in light are rather straight. It's important to balance this out nicely to make it look believable. I'm still learning more about how I want to do this. Finally, for adjusting Wanderer's CG illustration, I first adjusted the folds and centered his shirt's middle part. After this, the hair, mouth and eyes were the main things I changed in the final adjustment stage here. The eye outline, for example, seemed too black to me, like Wanderer would be wearing heavy eyeliner, which, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't mind and I could see him doing, especially as idol on stage. I just didn't like how it looked in my illustration. Wanderer is a bit similar to Zhao in how he seems rather cold and thinks logically. However, to me he also is more outgoing than him. You'd see him talk more often, and I think if he has any complaints he would not be afraid to speak his honest opinion. And while some might not like his cold, honest attitude, I can also imagine he'd be a very good singer and dancer due to his ambition and critical views, which many people would like a lot as well. He seems like he would participate in everything, whether it's writing songs, composing music, choreographing the dance performances, designing the outfits they'd wear, or keeping up with social media a bit. He'd kinda look over everything to critique anything that could be improved upon. Finally, I talk about idol characters Wanderer reminds me of. Here we have Ibara, Aichi, Makoto, Himaru, Soma, and Shu from Ensemble Stars, Ten, Sogo, and Minami from Idol 7, Ryuji and Onsai from B Project, and from Hypnosis Mike, Jakurai, Juto, and Sayuta. And finally, I reveal the name of this idol group because now you've seen all the members and heard me talk about them, and the name would be Fornemo. And yeah, if you had known this name from the beginning, I think you would have directly figured out most of the members. Now let's talk about the backgrounds for this idol group. Here I drew in some TVs in the background and added various elements and images. This also included a staircase, music boxes, butterflies and particles. For this I also imported a lot of images I had downloaded onto my PC, most of them from a site called rawpixel.com. I wanted the backgrounds for all the members to transition seamlessly into one another to make it look like they're together on stage, but to also work for each single illustration of the members. I also wanted each stage to feature slightly different elements for each group. Since all members are kneeling on the floor, I also wanted to make sure the perspective for this would be believable, and fitting to the animo theme I added in butterflies. Next, I move on to talk about idol groups. This group, Fornemo, would remind me of Dynamic Wise. First, we'd have Crazy Bee. Venti would fill in the role of Rinne here. Nikki fits to Kazuha, Zhao to Kohaku, and Wanderer to Himaru. Next would be Trickster. Subaru would remind me of Venti and Hokuto of Zhao. While Makoto is more insecure than Wanderer, other than that, their personalities are similar, and Mao is a very kind person, fitting to Kazuha. I could also imagine the dynamic between Kazuha and Wanderer being similar to that of Mika and Shu from Valkyrie, with Shu being like Wanderer here. They also remind me of Zul from Idol 7, Haruka would remind me of Zhao, Torao would be like Venti, Toma is like Kazuha, and Minami like Wanderer. Finally, for Hypnosis Mike, they are similar to Buster Bros for once, Venti being like Jiro, Kazuha like Ichiro, and Wanderer or Zhao like Sayuta. Then there also would be Mad Trigger Crew. Samatoki is kinda like Wanderer or Zhao, Ryu like Kazuha, and Juto would then be like Venti. Alright, finally for some groups that remind me of music and aesthetic wise. Here I mention Undead, Ryusetai and Alkaloid from N-Stars, Zool from Idol 7, Killer King from B Project, Buster Bros from Hypnosis Mike, Gyrexia from AA Side, Rock Down from Tsukiyata or Vazrock, Solid S from Tsuki Pro, Bay and Cosmos from Paradox Live, and from Actadict Actors, where you have these 4 groups based on the 4 seasons. They would remind me of the Autumn Troop. Alright, and that's it for part 3 of drawing Genshin Impact characters as idols. What do you think about this group and would you listen to their music? You can also let me know what kind of music you like in general, whether it's more on the rock or pop side, and if it has more of a happy or a sad vibe and so on. I myself enjoy listening to a variety of kinds of music. Who would be your favorite member within this group, and do you prefer their blue or turquoise idol outfit version? I also thought making idol groups based on the different types of visions or elements from Genshin Impact would be a cool idea, but for this the 2 previous groups were mixes within the different elements, but for this one we had one just focused on the elements and visions. You can also tell me what vision you would like to have if you were in the Genshin Impact universe, or if you were in a band, what kind of band or idol group would you like to be in. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about my process of drawing as well as idol anime characters and so on. Thank you for watching this video and I hope you look forward to the next part for this series. Have a nice day. Goodbye.